When this program began, the question was, were the claims for the mushroom true or false? Well, for those of us who made the journey, the answer is true.
Oh, hello, yes, are we on? Hello? All right. So we'll get ourselves started here. So hello and welcome to the 2018 annual meeting of the Alberta College of Paramedics. My name is Pete Helfrich and I serve as Council President, and so I will be chairing today's meeting. Should there be any reason to evacuate the building, there's 2 exits here at the back of the building and 2 at the front. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to acknowledge that this is the traditional land of the people of the Treaty 7 Nations in southern Alberta, and the city of Calgary is also home to Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta. And if I could ask you now all to please rise for a moment of silence as we remember our peers, our friends, or family in this profession who have died in the last year. People who died at work, people who died at home, died as a result of work, in the line of duty, or as a result of an illness. Begin now. Thank you. I'd like to introduce the staff and council who are able to join us today, and if I could ask the members of council to stand when I call your name. Ian Burgess, he's at the back of the room there. Tim Moen, Tim's off to the side here. John Jekyll, where are you, John? Oh, over there on the right side. Annabelle Stratton, Annabelle's over there. Lance Shepherd. Lance. Oh, good Lord. And Christina Phobes. Where are you? There you are. And our public members are Linda Cherry. Linda, I saw you. And then Harriet Johnston. Harriet's over there. Great. Missing today is Melissa Mannion and Dusty Schlitter. Melissa's the vice president and Dusty's the treasurer. They both have allowed me to explain Melissa's not here due to a significant family event, and Dusty just had some pretty major surgery last Wednesday, so they are not able to be here, and Lisa Jensen, the other public member, is not able to be here either. I also wanted to introduce the administrative staff. So we have Tanisha Tates, she's the interim executive director. Tim Ford, he's going to give the registrar update. Matt Aspden, he's the finance manager. Tanya Blades, I'm assuming you guys are all the way over there. Ilona Cardinal, Natasha Gonek, Suraj Kumar, Kathy McCormick, Kathy Nelms, Resh Prasad, Daryl Sagar, Chad Stroshin, and Jennifer Spatero. I just got a text to fix my glasses. I was actually just giving a table off to the side here that's chronologically challenged a hard time, and then I realized I had to put these glasses on. This year's meeting is again being broadcast live through the college's Facebook page, and so I want to welcome every one of you out there in the Facebook world and through social media, which also includes my 2 daughters, Ellie and Maeve. Ellie's 3.5 and Maeve is 2. Hi, girls. We certainly have a lot of topics to get through today. I should be using this. There we go, Facebook viewers. Today, but I just wanted to get through Pigeonhole again. So to sign in on your phone or tablet, just open a browser and then go to pigeonhole.at. So it's not .com, it's .at. And the password to access is community, all in capital letters. Pigeonhole, I'm told, is pretty easy to use, but if you have any questions, we did identify some of the staff, and so please just ask them and they'll help you out. Also, if you don't have a device, we have some spare tablets that we can loan out to people. With Pigeonhole, we learned a lot from last year that if you have a question that you want to ask, it'll require at least 10 votes to make it to the floor, but all questions that go through Pigeonhole will be answered in the Pulse in the coming months. Mr. Ian Burgess and Chad Stroshin will be moderating the questions, but only for anything inappropriate or profane or something like that. A few other housekeeping notes for today. The washrooms located on either side here. Coffee and tea is available at the back of the room there throughout the morning. Lunch will be served, again, just behind us there at the back of the room. And there was a door prize again this year. And so you got your little tickets, so hold on to that. And the door prizes will be announced in the afternoon. And I know the big one anyways, is the 2019 reg fee covered. So, and then there's some other door prizes, I'm told. So, the agenda for this morning. So we're going to go through the President's update and the interim ED update. And then we'll have some questions after that. Then we'll have, because Dusty's not here, Lance Shepard, who's a member of council, and Matt Aspin, they're going to provide the financial update, and then we'll have questions after that. We'll then end the morning session with some short 5-minute speeches from candidates who are running for council this year. And then this afternoon, we're going to have the Paramedic Association of Canada here. Pierre Poirier, I'm sure some of you know Pierre. He was also president of the college for a while. He'll be here to talk about PAC. Then we're going to have, and we'll have questions then. Then we'll have a regulatory update followed by some questions, and then finally a presentation on the college's exams. And I'm actually quite happy that the college exams is going to end up here on the floor today. And this was as a result of a question that I had with a paramedic friend of mine, John, in the ambulance bay at the Foothills. And he asked me a lot of questions about exams that I couldn't really give him the answer to. And that just started a lot of questions with Tanisha and other members of council, and we finally realized that we needed to have this conversation here today, and so I look forward to some great questions there. There are 5 different sections where questions can be asked, and depending on the timeline of how the day's going, it'll be 5 to 10 minutes that will allow for the questions. Remember, we've got to be out of here at like 3:15 or 3:30 at the very latest. So I encourage you to ask questions, provide your feedback, any suggestions or ideas that you might want to share. Is that it? Right? Yes. So in 2016, I was reelected to council, and it truly has been an honor in serving you. In my speech in 2016, I asked you to re-elect me because I, like many of you, was frustrated with how the college was operating. When re-elected, my main goal was to change the conversation that people were having about the college. The college should be a body that supports you and works in the public interest. It can do both. And so, since November of 2016, council and I have done our best to enable more evolution here at the college. Since November 2016, people have had direct access to the president through the president email. Since 2016, we have invited a number of groups or practitioners to council to share their experiences and talk about what they're doing with the profession. Last meeting, we had Blaine Brody come and talk about the Paramedics Honor Guard. And then next month, I think we're trying to get stars. The pulse has changed dramatically, and as a result, readership has gone from 40% to 65%. Since November 2016, we have spent a great deal of time and will continue to work toward governance excellence. We are currently rewriting the bylaws and the policies for council, and we're creating processes to go with those. That was something that was missing from before. Council now brings in subject matter experts on areas of governance to talk with us. Last month, we had a lawyer who had literally written the book on the concept of public interest. He came in and talked to us about what public interest really means, and I can tell you that lecture was a bit of a watershed moment for those of us on council. We've had team building, governance training, legal training on areas around the Act. We're going to get a lawyer who specializes in marijuana use in the workplace to come in and talk to us so we can be ready to help support members with that when that happens. It's also going to make council meetings go a lot slower, and we'll need some more potato chips. Hey, that was pretty good, eh? We've just sent out an RFP for a consultant to guide us on the creation for our next strategic plan. And I think, as an example of good governance, and after, I can tell you, an immense amount of work, council decided to separate the role of the ED and registrar position. And so I am delighted, and Wendy, if you don't mind standing just quickly, Wendy Dugas is our new executive director or CEO for the college. Wendy was born and raised in the Netherlands, where she completed a degree in human resources before starting her career at a recruitment agency in Amsterdam. She moved to Edmonton in 1999 and Wendy began working with United Way of Alberta Capital Region, where she found her passion for connecting community needs with donors' philanthropic interests. She has since worked at the University of Alberta, the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundation, and Ronald McDonald House, charities in Northern Alberta, where she gained extensive experience in fund development and stakeholder relations. In 2010, Wendy joined the Glenrose Rehabilitation Hospital Foundation as president and CEO, and has led the organization through creating and implementing a comprehensive growth strategy. Recently, her focus, and some of the reasons that we hired her, has been on building organizational capacity, excellence through strategic planning, governance and organization design, which will then, for the Glenrose Foundation, poise it for continued success into the years to come, and hopefully she'll bring that to the college as well. We're so pleased, I can't tell you, with all the work that we've done to finally have Wendy here, and she's really great, and please, I encourage you to go and introduce yourself to her. We've already started the process to hire the registrar. We're using another external firm. We're using a company called Recruitment Partners, and we hope to have this person in place somewhere in mid-August. The theme of today's event is community. The problem is, how do you define community? We're such a diverse group. Out of 9,000 members, approximately only 4,000 of us work on an ambulance. The rest work for a private company or an industrial service, or they're firefighters, police officers, educators, researchers, managers, directors. Some don't even practice being a paramedic anymore. Some are oil and gas executives, engineers, yoga teachers, or MLAs. So I tried to think of a common theme or a concept that connects us all in community. It took me a while, but it really was quite easy, and it's the star of life. It doesn't matter what you do or how you identify yourself. The star of life is the one thing that combines us all. It was created in 1973 out of the U.S. Department of Transport. The blue six-pointed star with the rod of Asclepius is something that we all identify with. And I wear my star of life, and I have worn it for years. I've worn it at the Alberta Ledge. I've worn it at Parliament in Ottawa. At any gathering or event, I wear it so I can identify myself as belonging to this community. It's not overwhelming or in your face. It just sits quietly, and it identifies me as someone who belongs to this community. And I've always actually thought that when you got your RO, the college should include this small pin with that, but my idea keeps getting shot down, although I wasn't president, so I might just try it again. Finally, and the end here, in 2017, I told you that we'd be bringing back registration cards, and the temporary version is here. If you go to the college website, you can go to your own profile. You'll be able to access your own card and print it off at home or work. Kind of like the Star of Life pin, a membership card identifies you as belonging to a community. But I know for some of you, you need it for your work purposes, and so it's available. It's temporary. Administration will get us a final version. Maybe it's something that the new CEO and registrar can work on. If you're interested, we have printers and a laminator in the back, so please help yourself. Thanks very much. I'll now invite the interim ED, Tanisha Tates, up to provide the executive director's report. Tanisha.
Thanks, Pete. For any of you who don't recognize me, my regular scheduled programming is actually as the college's communications director, a role that I started in March 2017, and definitely one I look forward to resuming when Wendy joins us later this summer. Either way, though, I am honored to still be sharing a few updates on behalf of the college today. So I guess it's only been a little over 7 months since our last meeting. So my update will be a little bit more on the briefer side, which should allow for a little more question and answer period than we did last year. And especially because I'm interim, and you'll hear more of the regulatory updates from Tim later after lunch. On the operations and administration side of the college, we continue to focus on clear, transparent communication. From the member survey last year, we heard very clearly that this is a significant issue to you, the members, and we want to deliver on that for you. For regulated members, this obviously means ensuring that you have the information you need to meet your regulatory requirements. but also that we're sharing with you the information about the college's activities and the professional in general. Some of the channels we're using, newsletters, so you've seen the Pulse, emails, direct emails that come to you about specific topics, the website, and of course social media, where our Facebook joiners are with us today. We have really worked, as Pete said, to improve the Pulse and the information provided in it over the last year. We committed to a schedule of sending it on the 15th or the next business day so that you have a consistent idea of when the college will communicate with you. As a communicator, to me, that's important to know that you will receive information from us at least on a monthly basis. Of course, our communications also support all of our regulatory activities in the college, which, as I said, you'll hear more about later on today from Tim. Those being continuing competence program, alignment with HPA, the PCP exam redesign, and changes to the registration process and how students are accessing exams. We're also continuing to focus on ensuring appropriate structures and policies are in place. This includes the work that we've been doing on enhancing the privacy policy. You'll have noted, I'm assuming from the information we've shared on the results from the OIPC and the privacy breach that unfortunately happened in 2016, all of those measures have been put in place now, and we've met all of the requirements and suggestions that were put forward to the college. The other area, of course, is our information technology policy. You probably, if you've signed up to any other newsletters or information from any other organizations, you've probably been getting those updates that we've updated our privacy policy. That's just a constant in our world today because of so much information being online. As we work to deliver both better support for practitioners, we're also focusing on areas where we can offer additional resources for members, including continuing competence opportunities, research, and coaching, specifically on matters that are related to professional conduct. This is an area where I know Jennifer Cedarwall, our complaints director, feels very passionately about. If you know in advance of situations that are putting members at risk for being the recipient of a complaint, we want you to know about those situations before they happen to you. So we're really starting to look at some of the trends that are coming in, some of the things that are getting people in trouble, and really focusing on letting you know what those are in advance so that you can avoid that and avoid a complaint against you. The college is also focused on ensuring support and resources for stakeholders of the profession, including the development of online resources, presentations, webinars for students, what to expect during that exam. I know that that's a common question, and I know there's a lot of apprehension around that. So if we can dispel any of those concerns or fears before you walk into that exam room, you're going to do better, and we're going to feel better about that you knew what to expect. And then, of course, working to ensure more formal communications and channels with our educators and our employers. As Pete said, only about 40% of practitioners work with AHS, which means we've got a large portion of members that don't have the benefit of those communications. So we want to make sure that those exist for you. One specific update that I should share with you is the, what we in the office are starting to call affectionately the Where Will We Live in 2019 project. So obviously, because the building project was canceled late last year, and our current lease is expiring in January 2019, we're still facing the question of what our next step will be for where the office will be located. A working group of staff, of which I'm actually really proud to be a part of, has been working on the options available, including staying in our current lease, so keeping the office where it is, maybe expanding into some of the available space that's next to us, to looking at a lease at a different property in a different location, and then 3, and this obviously depends on cost and availability, the determining factor on how feasible it would be to purchase an existing building and fit it to the college's needs. Of course, as we work through that, as with everything, our top priority is to ensure financial responsibility in those decisions. The work of the college is also being carefully considered, so this is something that we're planning probably to last us about 7 to 10 years. So it's not an insignificant decision and one we're taking very seriously. And that really brings me to just a few remaining legal items, actions that are still outstanding against the college. This is something we presented on last year and something that I'll just update you now on. It's important to note that all of these items stem from an unfortunate situation that happened almost 3 years ago, and one that we are very committed to resolving as quickly and efficiently as possible for everyone. The first is the judicial review regarding the former registration committee. We're working diligently to ensure that we're complying with everything that's required of us in that legal process. It is extensive, and we've gone so far as to suggest alternate paths of resolution on this. Of course, we want to be considerate and courteous of all the parties involved, and we want to, like I said, make sure that this is resolved respectfully. The second is also a judicial review. That one was brought toward the college about a year ago now. Unfortunately, this has moved a little bit slowly, despite our best efforts to come to a resolution. And again, we've tried on all accounts to find a way to resolve this as quickly as possible, and we do hope that we'll reach a resolution soon on that one. The last is a human rights complaint that I understand actually from our lawyer is nearing completion. So last, I guess not to get too sentimental on you, before we open for questions, I just really hope you'll allow me to say thanks to council and to the staff for all of their support and their work during this interim time. I know it hasn't been easy on any of us. But I'm just so very, very proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish and to be part of the community that's been formed over the last year. I'm honored to be part of this team. Thank you. So if we can switch over to Pigeonhole now, let's get to some of your questions.
We'll both stand. Sure. Where's the mic go? Oh.
Okay. Okay, looks like we have one. 13 votes, so let's answer it. What led to the decision to split the ED registrar position? Does this mean that the membership now has to pay for 2 salaries instead of 1? Great question. How does this affect the ACP budget overall and membership fees? Pete, do you want to speak to the splitting of the roles?
Yeah. Hang on, sorry.
We're good?
Is it up? Oh, okay. Yeah, so the decision to split the ED registrar position came out of the idea that, we're operating with a $7 million budget, and I think what we want is to have somebody who knows how to operate with that kind of budget, somebody who has business experience, somebody who has a long, history of finding efficiencies in business and organizational plans, working with a strat plan in creating the kind of success that we want. And I think the ED registrar position, especially when you look at kind of the budget that we have and the work that we do, it's just too much for one person. So that's why it was decided in the end to split the 2 roles, to allow the ED just to focus solely on the success of the organization and the business, and to allow the registrar then to focus with the ED, but to focus on the profession, how to promote or enable the profession to move forward. Anything else you want to add? Because there was some...
Probably just on the 2 salaries piece, and maybe, Matt, if you have anything to chime in after this. When we looked at the budget, we did a considerable revision of that earlier this year, just to make sure that we were looking for all the cost efficiencies possible. One of them, when we looked at the salaries component, was that the college previously had the executive director role as one role, as well as a deputy registrar role. To my knowledge, there's no intention to backfill that deputy registrar, so we're just basically separating out the work that was already being done in 2 different manners.
That's right. No, yeah. And that's right. There's no intention to backfill that deputy registrar role. I hope that answered the question. Okay, next. So 21, the 21 votes here. Would the purchase of a building allow for exam training space to help offset the practitioner financial load? Would the purchase of a building allow for exam? No, I would say no. Sorry, just...
Yeah.
Overall, no, it wouldn't. I think you'd need a lot of space. You'd need kind of double the space that we need for an office. And when you're only using that a few times a year, it'd be way too much space. So the space that we'd get if we purchased wouldn't offset or reduce those costs.
Right. And that was part of the reason. And sorry, and so it was having such a large building was part of the reason that we canceled the building project in the first place, because it was going to cost us about $90,000 a month just to operate the building. So we knew we couldn't afford that, and so hiring it out or loaning it out to say the University of Alberta for us to operate the exams there would be much cheaper than for us to try and have our own building.
Yep.
Did that work? Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's that one.
For any of you who are watching and seeing the answers to the questions, if you have questions about the answer, please feel free to put that in Pigeonhole as well. I hear laughter over here, so I'm assuming that's already happening. We'll take that into consideration when we review everything.
So there's just one question here that says, why do ACP registration exams? Ian, can we just pop that into later on with exams? We'll park that one so that it doesn't go away. You guys have,
Yeah.
what is the college doing to help deal with EMS hallway waits? Is that the one up? So we're definitely working with Alberta Health Services in any way we can to help them with this problem that they have. We've met with the health minister, we meet with AHS executives, and we're doing whatever we can. If they need us to help in any way, we're there to try and help them with that. I'm not sure how else. Is there anything else you want to say more gracefully than I would? No?
No, we're good.
Okay. You guys, yeah? Would Calgary be considered for relocation due to lower lease costs currently?
Let me jump in on that one.
Yeah.
Potentially, but what we do know about the business of the college is that all of the other regulators are in the Edmonton area. So that would complicate our working with the other regulators in the province, and we have a significant relationship with quite a few of them. Tim will actually mention later the Alberta Federation of Regulated Health Professionals that we belong to. So it's a group of regulators, registrars, executive directors who all get together and talk common issues that members are facing, that we're facing with the Health Professions Act, ways to approach government. So Calgary would be less desirable for that reason.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Tanisha. And sorry, everybody, Pigeonhole is a bit awkward. We're doing our best here. We'll figure it out, though. It's a good bit of IT. We'll figure it out. I'd now like to invite Matt Aston, and he's the college's finance manager, and Lance Shepard from council up to deliver the financial updates about the college.
All right. Oh, good. Good morning, everyone. I know you're all used to seeing Dusty up here. She's our treasurer, but as you heard, she's a little under the weather at the moment, so you'll have to settle with me, and I will try not to disappoint you all. I'm Lance Shepard. I'm a member of council, and my lovely helper, Matthew Aspden, is our financial manager. He's got all the answers to your questions, I hope. So first, I'd like to touch on our annual audit. You might remember that last year, council changed the audit firm that we were using. We're now using Deloitte, and last year they provided us with 9 areas where we could improve our business practices as a college. So since Matt joined the college, he has been working his tail off and has actually managed to implement all of their recommendations. This year they signed a clean audit and gave us no recommendations. So that shows that we have improved our business practices and now have some strong financial controls in place. And you'll see there's a small excess of revenues over expenses, which is an improvement from 2016. This year we were presented with having lower registration and exam revenues, due in part to no longer having the requirement of laddering within our designations, and also the general economic factors within Alberta. Initially, this had us facing another deficit budget, which is something nobody wants to hear. However, council and management recommitted to being fiscally responsible and cutting costs where possible and streamlining processes. We challenged to look at our core business and focus on our core business, and management was able to revise the budget and come back with a break-even budget, which council approved for 2018. And you'll see exams are also projected to be near break-even. And while numbers can be pretty dull, we did want to show you something that outlines the college's commitment to cutting costs, being responsible, and yet still intending to support our core business of registry services. Exams, program approval, conduct, continuing competence. You can see in the numbers, our total revenue is expected to be down by a little over $400,000. But we met that with cutting costs in corporate admin, finance, and council. So rather than compromise member services, the college is committed to becoming more efficient, which not only helps out our budget, but it should improve our service to you, the internal stakeholders. So that covers off the past and the present, but what about the future? Well, I can tell you that all of council and administration are committed to working closely with Wendy Dugas, our new executive director, to implement positive change for our profession. Coupling that with financial responsibility and transparency to be good stewards of your college. I'd like to finish just by saying, based on our current finances and the budget we have this year, the college is in a strong financial position. We do need to be prudent with our expenditures, but as council and management are already committed to this, we're confident the college will stay financially healthy well into the future. So, questions from the pigeonhole? Technology, it's great. How does ACP justify the high registration and examination fees compared to other jurisdictions such as British Columbia or Ontario? So, I'm sure Pete's about to tell you that one of the things that costs us a lot more money in Alberta is that we are self-regulated. Is that?
I just want this. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So everybody remember that British Columbia, the government of British Columbia funds the regulator. So that's how they don't have to have the kind of fees that we do. We are not funded at all by the province, by the government. We have to cover all of our own fees. So that's the first thing. And Ontario, I mean, they're not a great example because they're a bit of a hodgepodge with how they all, it just depends on what part of Ontario you're in, will depend on how much you pay for fees. So, I think you have to keep that in mind when you try and compare us to provinces like BC or Ontario.
Yeah. Membership fees were raised by $100 to pay for the building. When will you be lowering the fees now that the building is canceled? As of right now, we will not be lowering the fees. I know that's not what anybody wanted to hear, but realistically, we're trying to operate as responsibly as possible. And you might have noticed a break-even budget. Not-for-profit is a tax status. It's not a business plan. Currently, our membership fees are paying our bills and keeping us at break-even. So we won't be lowering membership fees in the near future.
I'll just add to that. The HPA created a few different areas for the college to pay attention to when it comes to business expenses. Certainly things that we can't really control, especially in the area of conduct. The whole complaints process changed for us under HPA, so we're still getting a feeling of what all of those costs for resolution pathways and hearings means for the college. So unfortunately, with the drop in membership, changed our projected revenue, which means that $100 per member that it was raised 2 years ago is actually offsetting what we currently need to function under our required regulatory services right now. So while it's not something like Lance said you want to hear, eventually it would have had to have been to 525 regardless of, just due to the economic circumstances, the change in the HPA and the drop in numbers.
At one point, the college owned some land. Does the college still own the land, or was it sold? Currently, the college still owns the land. We are in the process of trying to sell the land. Bare land doesn't sell overnight. We are in the process of trying to sell it, and we are trying to find the best ways to mitigate any losses in that process.
And yeah, we've it's on the balance sheet, the audited financial statements, the land's still there. And it's been written down to the fair value, which we expect to sell it for. Again, that could change. It could go down or up in the future.
So the college...
Can we just see the list of questions there, Ian? Is there none left?
That's not... So the top question, is there an intent to increase the scope of practice of the PCP? That can probably hold off. Are you expecting an increase in fees this year? Not that I'm aware of.
No, we are not expecting an increase in fees this year.
College has talked about financial transparency and prudence for many years. When are we going to see this policy implemented? We're implementing it as best as we can right now. Can we...
That's just a tough question to answer. I'm not exactly sure what else the person would want as far as financial transparency. The audited financials are available. I'm not sure. Matt?
Yeah. I think one step we've really taken to kind of improve that is even just between the college employees and council. And I think even you guys are kind of starting to see and get answers a lot more quickly and clearly from the college to the council. So I think we're definitely trying to make improvements in that area, and I think we've already seen some.
And speaking to prudence, I mean, we can put the graph back up, but we've made significant cuts to our budget to make things fit. We're trying to be streamlined and efficient.
Well, of course we would be. Of course we would be open to government funding, but I don't think that's an opportunity for any government right now. So.
Well, and the real downside is they would take control of us. We would lose our self-regulation in the process.
I will tag on to that one, though. The college does receive a couple of grants for certain projects. One was to help us with the transition for information sharing between the college and the government. Some of those pieces that AHS needs on members, all strictly privacy protected, and everything is appropriate in that information sharing, but it is one of those areas where they recognize that we would be doing work on behalf of the members and on behalf of them so that they can carry out their business. So that grant was given.
Matt, can you answer this question?
For a question that's looking for numbers, we'll probably just table that and we'll answer it with kind of a more specific answer.
Okay.
But I mean, we can speak to the fact that there are a lot of things that the college does that require hiring and employing legal assistance. And yes, it does cost money.
And I guess I'd just finish by saying, even though we budget a certain amount for it, it's definitely one of our most variable amounts. Sometimes it'll go up. We do everything we can to reduce it, but it'll change always from year to year, depending on what goes on.
I should probably also let you know that the college's insurance does pay for some of our legal costs when it comes to actions brought against us and you as members, obviously, because you are the college. So we have been making use of our policy, and our insurers have been covering some of those legal costs. What Lance was alluding to or inferring is that there are legal costs that we can't avoid. Those would be opinions that we need on hearings or resolutions, those are all part of conduct legal fees that those aren't covered by our policy, obviously.
So has council taken a wage freeze or a decrease in response to the current economic status? So there hasn't been an increase in the per diem that councillors get paid in the entire time that I've been there, so that's 5 years now. And we had, previously we had two committees of council, Finance, Risk Management, and Governance and Nominations. And when the chairs of those two committees were paid an honorarium, but that, because we collapsed those two committees, we don't pay that anymore. So we just have the one council executive committee that works instead of having those two separate committees. So that's an attempt for us to try and reduce our fees. We really are looking at a number of different ways to try and reduce costs. One of them, as simple as how do we get to the college? Driving. Instead of driving our own personal vehicles now, we're all trying to rent vehicles because it's significantly cheaper because of the contract that they have with rental companies for us to rent a vehicle and drive up there than to drive our own vehicle. It sounds silly, but it's like half the cost if we take a rental vehicle. So we're doing our best to try and reduce fees as much as we can.
And council's not alone in that. I know Matt told me earlier. So a bunch of the. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the savings are even greater when we make a real effort to carpool. I know I was in a car with 3 other employees. We made sure we rented a car and carpooled together so that we didn't have a bunch of people renting lots of vehicles or a lot of people trying to claim mileage. So we're making a big effort to cut expenses everywhere we can.
Yeah, sure. Can the practical exams be eliminated? This will lower exam costs substantially. The educational institutes should be meeting the standards of the NOCPs for practicing. Focus should be on knowledge. No, you're going to hear a lot. You're going to hear a lot about exams this afternoon. Yeah.
I can try and
go ahead.
Field this, but
this is fun.
There's going to be a really good presentation from exams later that they'll be able to maybe address this better than I can, but can it be eliminated? That's not in the plan right now.
No.
So, yeah, that's the short answer.
I'm going to do my tagging on to that answer. Part of practical exams makes sure that we know that you're ready to treat patients, and that is in the public interest. We don't want to send members out there who have the knowledge but have never demonstrated the skill. That doesn't set up you for success, it doesn't set up the patient for success, and it doesn't set up the college and the profession for success. So practical exams, and I know Judy will defend this one to the death, it's important.
What percentage of your budget goes to support regulatory responsibilities? Do we have a percentage? I mean, we can get the answer for that, and it will definitely so anything that's not answered up here will be answered in the pulse and posted to the college's website. I gotta be honest, Roger, I don't have a number in front of me, and I don't think Matt does either.
Yeah, rather than ballpark it, I'd rather
So,
give an accurate answer later.
We'll get you an accurate answer. It just won't be right here, right now. Cool.
Okay.
So.
What are we at for time, though? So we're moving along a whole lot quicker than we expected, which is a good thing, because that means we'll be out of here a lot faster. But just give me a second here to try and figure out how we can best manage our time. Just give me a second. Should we just... Yeah, I guess, hey? And then if we have time, we could do the regulator even in the morning here. Yeah, okay. So, as you can see, what we're going to do is just move ahead to the council candidates for council election for 2018. I just need to find my speaking notes here so I can talk to it. For God's sake. Here we are. So there's 2 3-year positions that will be decided through the council elections this year. The vote will be conducted through simply voting, which was successful from last year. This year's votes will take place between August 1st and August 10th. People are pointing at me and telling me that I'm supposed to be doing something. Let's get through the candidates now, since I've already started, and then we'll do general questions afterwards. So this year's vote will take place between August 1st and August 10th. So please do make sure that your email address is up to date on your profile in the member portal, and please make sure it is specific to you and not a general email address that can be accessed by anyone else. Our four confirmed candidates here are Luke Flowers, John Jekyll, Travis Lanaway, and Annabelle Stratton. So if I could get you guys to exit stage right, and then I'll get the 4 candidates to please come up to the stage here. So we got Travis Lanaway, Annabelle Stratton, Luke Flowers here, and then John Jekyll. So thanks, everyone. I'll get Luke Flowers. You're up first, please. And so it's 5 minutes, and I'll be watching the time, or Siri will be watching the time, and I'll give you a 1-minute finger waggle if you need it. So, Luke?
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank Annabelle, John, and the other members of council for their time, energy, and dedication to the profession, since I'm sure for the most part this is actually a fairly thankless job. So I've only 5 minutes. If you'll please bear with me, I'll be reading from my notes. My memory is, since Jen and I had our daughter just over a year ago, essentially become a sieve. So, talking of this 5 minutes allowed to me, when I was invited to speak today, I was advised to speak to a couple of points with respect to my platform. I don't really consider myself a politician, so I can't say that I have a platform as such. I certainly don't subscribe to any flavor of party, dogma, or ideology. However, if I had to pick a philosophy that speaks to me most, I'd say pragmatism is the closest. So pragmatism to me means that the institutions, processes, ideas, and directions that we choose, first and foremost, have to work. And being stuck on a position that simply isn't functional in the real world is a dead end that wastes energy and resources. So one of the areas that I think paramedicine in Alberta has been successful from a pragmatic point of view has been the constant focus on defining the profession and what it is to be a paramedic. Understanding what we believe paramedicine to be allows us to capitalize on our strengths and continue improving patient service and outcomes. So both in new areas like community paramedicine and just as importantly in our core mission of pre-hospital emergency care. So one of the areas where I think paramedicine and healthcare in general seems to be struggling, and in my view a more pragmatic approach is needed, is in the increasing complexity of our jobs. In the course of my education, I've studied neuropsychology, organizational behavior, and human factors analysis. And the common thread is that we humans have limits to our capacity to perceive, integrate, and act. When those limits are exceeded, stress, ultimately dysfunction, is a result. So the workload we are subjected to includes constant increasing cognitive, attentional, and memory demands, including more algorithms, more communication and technological devices, more policies, and they don't appear to be adequately offset by reduction in other areas or expectations. So these demands are matched in our personal lives that are more complex and more busy and more beset by increasing amounts of information of dubious accuracy. So in order for our systems to be pragmatic, they need to be respectful of the fact that we as paramedics are humans. We're constrained by our human limitations and often functioning at less than perfect as a direct result of the stresses of our work, physically and psychologically. How I believe that this pertains to ACP is that, at the end of the day, the internal processes and the external facing information must be respectful of the sacrifices that EMRs, PCPs, and ACPs have made to become members of the profession. It must respect the fact that on entering the profession, you, did so to help Albertans in need. And that when you show up for work, you fully intend to provide services to your patients to the best of your abilities. When errors do occur, I'm confident that no one set out to cause harm. And so our governance body needs to have pragmatic systems that are respectful and just in their impacts on your practice, and more importantly, on your livelihood. So this begs the question then, why me? Unfortunately, I was once called the worst the college has to offer during a Facebook conversation. So because I was supporting and advocating for the continuing education system that we currently have when it was in its infancy. I will not hide the fact that I have high standards for our practitioners, for our profession, and most of all for myself. I can promise you that I will work incredibly hard in this position. Perhaps more importantly, though, is I can admit that I have made mistakes. In my professional life, in my personal life, errors I would dearly love to take back, or at least fully make amends for. So because of this, you can expect from me compassion. I am not perfect, and I will certainly take the humanity of our practitioners into consideration when I'm making decisions about the profession, about ACP, and your practice. So should I receive your endorsement for this position? I'd love to thank you for listening to me for these 5 minutes. So I understand there will be an opportunity to ask some questions, but if that doesn't work, you feel a need to engage later on, I look forward to any discussion about the future of our profession. You can reach me at my Twitter handle, which is @EMSProfessional, and the L is numeral 1. So thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of this meeting, and I hope you get an opportunity to see the exciting posters and presentations of the EMS Research Day tomorrow. So I believe that the future of our profession is bright. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Next up is Jonathan Jekyll. John? I got 5 minutes.
Thanks. Hello, friends and colleagues. Like Pete mentioned, my name's John Jekyll. I do go by Jonathan, but I'm usually in trouble when I hear that. I currently sit on council, and I'm finishing up a 3-year term and seeking re-election. So thank you for the opportunities to speak to you today. So I've been in paramedicine now for coming up on 20 years. I graduated in '99, and I've seen the profession grow dramatically in those past 20 years, and I'm very passionate about our profession. I think we do really important work, and I love the fact that it's dynamic, and it really drives me, which is why I'm seeking re-election, because I really think that there's a bright future ahead. I know that we face significant challenges in EMS today, but I'm not a person who focuses on a negative view of challenges. I see them as opportunities. So I just thought I'd spend a couple of minutes to give you some insight into what I think about the profession and the direction it might be going, and some opportunities. So I think that it's important to continue the work to redefine our role in the community and the care that we provide. I think the old model of call a paramedic, get a trip to the hospital doesn't serve our patients very well, doesn't serve our community, and doesn't serve our medical system. And I think we need to continue the work and support the continuation of the work to look for the best option for each patient that we care for. And that's not always a hospital, and that there's opportunities to bring our knowledge and our expertise to work collaboratively with other healthcare professionals to find the best solution for each patient that we serve. Second opportunity I see is under the Health Professions Act is the entrepreneurial spirit that I've encountered in many paramedics that I've worked with over the years. I think that the entrepreneurial spirit, outside of thinking of medical systems and the systems that we work with in emergency services, provides opportunities to look for providing care and opportunities for growth in communities. And that we need to support that entrepreneurial spirit within our paramedic community, because this is where I think we'll start to focus on supporting people looking for solutions that are outside the box, and that a regulator needs to be responsive to seeing those opportunities as opportunities to provide additional care in our communities. The last point I'd make is evidence-based. It's a term that we all hear, but a lot of the evidence base that we currently use is driven by other professionals. And I think that we need to support our paramedic researchers in conducting research in the paramedic practice. This is important because as we talk about the issues that I've already brought up around continuing the work to change the delivery of care that we provide to patients and the opportunities the opportunities to change our practice, we also need evidence to support the fact that we are doing this in a patient-centered way with the outcomes that we expect to see. So thank you for your time. I know it was brief, but I hope that if some of what I've talked about resonates with you, that you'll support me in a re-election, and thank you for your time.
Great, thanks, John. And now we'll hear from Travis Lanaway. Travis?
Good morning. My name is Travis Lanaway. This is actually only my second AGM meeting in 20 years, so glad you guys could get me out finally. A lot more people here than a union meeting. Before I get into what I envision and what my role in council will be, I recently had an experience in our healthcare system. So if you question my dedication to ACP, hopefully this will change it a bit. The Monday before I went up a month ago to ACP, my appendix exploded. Tells you I'm not a very good practitioner, evidently, because I couldn't recognize the fact that I had an appendicitis. I managed to get up the next morning, drive to Edmonton, go to the meeting, drive home, then realize the next morning I really needed to go to the hospital. Turns out it had exploded 2 days prior, and I spent a month recovering and a week in the hospital. So I got to be a member of our healthcare system, and I actually got stuck in the hallway, believe it or not, and I got to experience what some of the paramedics are experiencing or the patients are experiencing when we're dealing with stuff. So if you're going to question my dedication, how many other people here are going to let their appendix blow up and go to a meeting? So I don't have a prepared speech. Most of you know I just talk off the cuff. I like to speak, and I like people to listen to me. Where I envision this going and why I applied to council is I'm tired of people complaining about it. I'm tired of complaining about it. The best way for me to learn about something and make change in something is to become part of something. So if I want to learn how council works, which I feel most of our profession has no idea how council works. I've been a member for 20 years, and I've learned more in the last month about how council works than I have in the previous 20 years. Doesn't mean that everybody's had the opportunities that I've had to learn and develop and grow and see what the council does. So I think the first thing we need to do is educate. We need to educate you on what the council actually does, what the profession actually does, so that you can have the information to go out to the public and tell them. So maybe in the hallway you're not going to complain about the college, you'll complain about who you work for, or you'll complain about who won the hockey game last night, instead of complaining about what the college can or can't do for you. I very much believe in change. And these are things that I want to see changed. I don't want us to feel that the college is an enemy. Most of us feel that way. Let's not kid ourselves. We do feel the college is an enemy. So we need to change that. We need to build that trust. The good thing about the college is, I look at it as we have two distinct things. We have culture, or job and profession. So we may not like our jobs. Most of us don't. Like, we go to work. It's not the best work. We don't see our families. We don't get happy times. Nobody calls a paramedic to say, hi, how are you? They call because we're seeing the worst in their lives. But that's not our profession. That's our job. Our profession is why we got into this, why we love what we do. And I think we've lost focus on that. And I think the way the college is set up now, the college should be driving our culture. We need to take back our culture. We need to take back our profession. And the college, I think, has the tools and the ability to do that. No more should we allow the jobs to tell us what we can and can't do. Why is the profession not telling everybody else what we can and can't do? We seem to be taking the back run, and I don't believe in that at all. I believe strong leadership leads to strong profession, and that's where I want us to separate job and profession and realize by education what we can do as a profession to change our culture. Our culture has changed. When I joined, so we could drive fast, wear cool uniforms, get good money. It was fun. It was a family environment. We're spending too much time fighting amongst ourselves now when we should be fighting the common enemy. We need to band together and have a strong profession. And that's what I believe my voice in council can do, is hopefully help us meet those goals and obligations. I saw questions about the exam committee. If anybody knows, I'm very vocal about exams. My thought, if we're trying to be fiscally responsible, why can't we push the exams back to the colleges? Why can't we? Maybe we'll learn this afternoon why we can't. But if we're trying to be prudent and cut down on financial costs, why can we not have the examiners go to the individual colleges when we do the testing? Wouldn't that cut down on paying 100 examiners or 50 examiners to drive to Edmonton every day and stay in hotels and everything else? We have examiner bases all over the province. Why not build that partnership with the colleges so that, again, we strengthen our profession from the ground up versus, again, people dictating to us how we can do this? Again, I know this is off the cuff. I believe in change. I believe in a strong voice. And I want to help you make that change. So a vote for me just means, hey, you get a voice on council. I'm very transparent. I will tell you everything I know, as you can ask my staff members. Probably tell them too much, actually, but I don't believe that's a bad thing. So thank you very much for your time. And again, I just want a stronger profession.
That's great. Thanks, Travis. And Annabelle Stratton.
Thanks, Pete. I'm not a big speaker. I don't speak for long periods of time. I prefer standing in front of a classroom and teaching, so this is kind of weird for me. So I'm going to make this really brief. I joined council last year in August, and I was the unfortunate one that got the one-year term. A couple different things that happened as a result of that. I didn't get to do this speech last year, so it's nice to finally be up here and get to say hi to everybody. The other point was that I spent a year on council. I learned a ton of information about how this college works and where I would like to see it go to move towards a more positive future for us as practitioners, and as a full basis of people understanding who we are as practitioners and where we sit in the full scope of medical practice. So I spent a year working on all of this, and now it's coming to an end, and I would really appreciate the time to sit on this council for another 3 years and to continue the work that I've started to do, because I feel like in that 1 year, yeah, I did a lot of positive things, but I'm not done. So I would like for you to make it able for me to continue doing that, and that's all I have to say. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, Annabelle wins for the shortest speech, so we got to get her a door prize or something. Well, thanks very much to everybody, the candidates. Really appreciate the fact that you're running. I know what it's like, so it's great that you've stepped up to do this. It really does demonstrate some professionalism, so I really appreciate it. So thanks very much. I don't think there's no questions. There wasn't supposed to be questions for the... No, so that's it. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Hey? Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, so we're like way ahead of time. So what we're going to do is have Tim Ford come up and provide the regulatory update. Some of you may know Tim from his work on the registration committee. Tim was the chair of the registration committee. He stepped in. Heather Rabas is on a leave of absence, and so he stepped up just to provide fill the role of the registrar and to provide the regulatory update for this. Tim's a paramedic with Calgary for more than 20 years, and he's got a great knowledge of both the HPA, the legislation, and how the registration committee works. Tim.
Thanks, Pete. As he mentioned, I'm Tim Ford. I've been serving as the chair of the Reg Committee for the last 2.5 years. And during this time, I've had the opportunity to work with the college as it transitioned into the Health Professions Act. And due to the nature of work that the Reg Committee does, we do a lot of dealings with regulatory issues. So the college felt that I was best positioned to fill this role while they look for a permanent registrar. So bear with me as I go through a few of the regulatory items in regards to the college. Whoop. So, like they stated earlier, this is the first year that they've split the ED and registrar role. This is something I'll say I'm excited about. In the month that I've been in this role, I can clearly see that it's a big job. There's a lot of work to be done, and splitting the ED and the registrar role splits that workload, essentially. And I'm super happy that we've now got an ED in place, and I look forward to the registrar being filled permanently sometime this summer. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what the registrar actually does. It's responsible for registration, continuing competence, standards and evaluations such as education, program approvals, and exams, and to some degree conduct. And the registrar also will be carrying on the work that is taking place that aligns us with the requirements set out by the HPA and the PPR, such as our continuing competence program, which I will discuss a bit more in a few minutes. So the HPA, we're now part of a greater healthcare community. Oh, right, thank you. Pete mentioned earlier we belong to this group called the Alberta Federation of Regulated Health Professionals. It's a mouthful. And this sort of association with this group allows us all as regulated health professions to speak to the government as sort of one united voice. This, I've sat in on one meeting of this, which I was lucky enough to do, and it's a fantastic resource. This group gives us, we use the information to share, the relationship to share information and ideas. One of the examples that we're looking at in our own program approval standards, nursing have an advisory board on this. It's something that we could consider looking at as we enhance and improve our program approval standards. So we've been able to reach out to these other professions and get some ideas and see how they're doing things. But one of the questions I hear a lot, and understand that I was 30 days ago, I was still a practitioner. I was still waiting in the hallways. One of the questions I've always got was, what's in it for me? And you know, when I look at that question and how it's posed to me, I've been working in downtown core Calgary for about 20 years. And really the short answer to what is in it for me is not much. You get the same pay, same protocols, same employer. But the HPA actually does have some benefits. It potentially changes the practice settings that we work at, particularly for people who work, or practitioners who work in remote sites, industrial sites, clinical or hospital-based settings. There's a number of them. And as more training becomes available and we sort of broaden our scope of practice, the properly trained practitioner can have more tools in the bag to positively enhance patient outcomes. So there actually might be benefits to guys like me for being in this as we move further down this path of the HPA. Already we're seeing practice sites opening up in helping dentists with sedation. The expansion into mobile integrated health and the community care paramedic program are all quite exciting. And something I'm just going to speak to here is this emergency care for police service dogs. All right. Just as an example of sort of an interdisciplinary collaboration, an exciting thing that's happening right now is the TEMS unit out of Calgary. They've done a lot of work over the last couple of years, and it's Travis Cox and his team, if anyone knows him, have put just a tremendous amount of time and effort into creating training programs, drafting protocols, working with CPS and the K9 unit and their vets to come up with a plan to provide emergent care for these injured officers. I think this is just a fantastic program. And luckily I came in right at a time where we're just kind of wrapping that piece up. So we got to meet with the Alberta Veterinary Medical Association registrar and discuss this. And they're as excited about doing this as we are. We've drafted a memorandum of understanding. It's in the final phases of being signed. We hope that this program can get underway very shortly. And it's going to initially start in Calgary. They're going to, once it's thoroughly evaluated, they're hoping to expand it right across the province. So this is just one sort of really good example of sort of how working under the HPA and belonging to the AFRH Alberta Federation of Regulated Health Professionals, can lead to better relationships and collaboration. So I'm going to speak to the actual role of the registrar here for a little bit. I mentioned the 4 areas that we cover. One of them, the one I'm probably most familiar with, is registration, sitting on the Reg Committee and watching us transition into HPA. In order to be compliant with the HPA, the college had to revise the registration and exam process by requiring students to be provisionally registered with the college before they are permitted to take the exam. Many of the educators out here, if anyone's recent students, have probably gone through this process. Essentially now, once you're completed your training, you can apply to be put on the provisional registry. That allows you access to the exams. You write the exams, pass that, boom, you're on the general registry and you can practice. I speak to that because it is a bit of a change in the way of practice, and I want everyone to understand that the reason this is a change is so we can comply with the regulations under the HPA. A note on the chart there, you can actually see our actual numbers for registration. We have a total, if you combine everything on the provisional registries and the general registries for all 3 different categories, our total number is 8,962 registered members. And just to compare this, we got a figure from March 15th, 2017. We had 8,942. So we're essentially about the same amount. All right. One of the other things that the registrar is responsible for is education. In regards to education, prior to me coming on here, and I found this out over the last 4 weeks, there was a lot of excellent research performed over the last few years and input from stakeholders about what level of training should be delivered to our EMRs. And this research led the college to develop higher standards for the education requirements for EMRs. In February of 2017, the college sent out these improved standards for training, and the majority of the training institutions have stepped up to meet these expectations. The college and the registrar's office will continue the implementation of these new standards through 2018 and into 2019, and this will ensure that Alberta's EMRs will be among the best trained in Canada. All right, so program standards, that's what I was just speaking to. The first step will be implementing the EMR education requirements. EMR standards will be the first step, and we'll be pushing to ensure everyone meets these standards. But as for where we're headed, we're committed to seeing paramedic degree programs available in Alberta by 2025. So the college's role in all this will be develop program standards, which will help guide the educational institutions into creating these degree programs. And I want to emphasize it would be my wish or my vision to see this being as more collaborative and working with the institutions as a regulator, regulating their programs and providing assistance where we can. Let the educators educate and the regulators regulate. It's a line of a favorite song of mine. Yeah, come on. All right, so evaluations. A lot of work's been completed on EMR exam redesign, and we're going to have actually the exam committee come up and speak to it because I think Pete alluded to it. It's an important topic. It's the practitioner's first interaction with the college, and there's been a lot of work done. And again, in the last month, I've been exposed to what goes on with exams, and it's. I hope you find it as fascinating as I did, because I think it's amazing. They've redesigned the EMR exam, and they're currently going through the last phases of the PCP exam. And they've been working on they're trying to provide more feedback to the people who write the exams as far as their areas of weakness. They've increased the training for examiners. There's a thorough exam review, which Judy and her team will be going through this afternoon. So I'll just sort of breeze past that one as we're going to be going into quite a bit more detail on that. Continuing competence. So under the HPA, we were given 5 years to formalize the continuing competence program and get aligned. For 2019, our goal is to move from a 2-year 120 credit cycle to a 1-year 60 credit cycle. It's a change, but this will help guide us to get us where we need to be in 5 years so that we align under the requirements that we need to meet. There will still be a required learning element, which the Continuing Competency Committee will develop and make sure every practitioner has access to it. And there will be a lot of, there's already been a lot of work to develop these extra professional development and self-directed learning. That work will continue, and there will be a lot more programs available for gaining your credits. All this move still has to be finalized with council, but I foresee us moving to a 1-year 60 credit cycle for 2019. And conduct. I'll just give you some numbers here. 17 files were carried over from 2017. There's been 20 new complaints since January 1st, and as of May 1st, 31 active files. We have 3 files left that are still that were filed under the Health Disciplines Act, and then we should be completely under the HPA moving forward. So just in speaking to these statistics, it's important to realize that the college does spend a significant amount of their resources on complaint files. Each file can be upwards of around $10,000 by the time the investigation is complete, and more if it has to go in front of a hearing tribunal. So, you can do the math yourself, but it can be an expensive area of business for the college. The conduct department works diligently with all of the members who are subject to complaints to sort of proceed through an alternative complaint resolution process if it's possible. One of the largest areas of complaint really still remains unprofessional conduct, and that sort of is the largest area that we see issues coming up. Finally, in relation to conduct, we'll begin publishing these decisions on the Pulse and on the website, sort of like if a few of us will remember the days of APA, when we used to get those letters, and in the back page you could read what has went down with discipline. We're looking at this as this is something other regulated professionals do, and it's going to be done in the sense to provide learning opportunities for everyone. Also, and to provide a greater level of transparency as well. So, I think I spoke to all the facets that I can think of speaking to. Is there any questions? I guess we'll switch over to Pigeonhole.
So I'd prefer anything that has to do with exams, if we could maybe park it until after we have the exams talk. I mean, we're way ahead on time, so I expect we'll be able to take a few more questions. I'm sorry, I cannot read that. Okay. No. Yes. So there's one question here. From Roxanne. What opportunities will be created this year to hear from the practitioners? I am open to any other suggestions. Like I said, we have opened up council to have practitioners and groups come in and speak to us. In fact, I think every council meeting since November of 2016, we have had a practitioner or a group come in and speak to us. And so I am happy to listen to practitioners come in and talk to us, because I feel it's important for us to hear what it is that's happening out there. And like I said, we had, I don't know what is going on down here. Like I said, we had Paul Brody come in. We had Nicolas Lefebvre come in and speak to research. We had a whole bunch of different people over this last year and a half come in and speak to us. Also, I mean, we do have the ability for people since November of 2016 to access the president directly. And you also know who your counselors are, including the public members. And those people are open, if you need to try and talk with them. But if you have any other suggestions, sincerely, email me, because I would love to hear about how we can get access to you and you can get access to us. Fantastic. Tim says, just read it out so that the Facebook people hear it.
Are we going here? Just need to make sure this mic's working.
I'll read the question while they get the mic working. Credits. The college demands that credits be earned in order to maintain registration. Does the college provide online free opportunities to earn credits?
Yes, is the short answer. But there will be a required learning component. So every year we have a required learning. That'll remain. There will be professional development opportunities that'll be posted on there. Understand this is in development. So currently we're under the system we're in. You take a 6-hour course, you get 5 credits an hour. There's 30 credits. As we move forward, yes, there will be online opportunities to earn credits. There will be self-directed learning that can get you credits. There will be professional development or training courses like, I'm drawing a blank, CPR, thank you, ACLS, all those type of courses will give you credits as well. I suspect, and I'm looking at this as a practitioner, it shouldn't be for the 2019 cycle, especially 60 credits over that year. I don't foresee that it'll be an issue getting credits.
Sure. I don't know if Tanisha has anything to add. I think one thing we really need to consider is that it's easy as an AHS employee to get credits. Like, very, very easy to get credits. What I do think about are the people who are in industrial or in remote, private services. Where do they get their credits from? And that's definitely something that we know needs to change. And it's something that we're working on. But I think I do need to ask for a bit of, leeway. We've undergone some significant change in leadership at the college in this last year. And so what happens is you have to triage all the different activities that you want to have happen at the college. And so some things get triaged higher than other things. You all know how that works. But definitely, please understand that doing better for industrial paramedics or paramedics who are non-AHS employees, we need to do a better job of getting credits for you guys. We know that, and it will happen. I'll just read the question. If over to you. Sorry.
I will just add to that. One thing that twinged me on that question was the word free. I'm sure you caught it too. Because of what Pete's saying about AHS versus private practitioners, what we'll probably focus on, and I know I'm putting words in Wendy's mouth right now, is making sure that any free components are the ones that are required for everyone, just to make it fair and equitable, and then we'll look at the development of more opportunities down the line.
Yeah. If over 60% of members do not practice on an ambulance, should we not be spending more money on making it easier to continue competency and providing this free online to keep these people on board? So the answer is yes. We know that we need to provide better opportunities, easier opportunities for people who do not work in the traditional sense, where it really is easy to get credits. So we know that. Next. The college wants to share what situations to avoid in regards to complaints. Will there also be a list of situations that have been reviewed and are not situations that warrant a complaint? Ooh. Well, I guess that's a good question. Yes. I think what we're trying to do here with this, and it was Jim Casey with Field Law came and talked to us about public interest. And one of the things that he said that we need to be doing in the Pulse is demonstrating or showing you if there's a problem, If something's happened, if there's a bunch of complaints happening, then what the college needs to do is be able to stand there and say to you, look over there, there's complaints coming in. And we want to make you aware of this. So in a way, we're supporting you in understanding issues that are coming forward so that you can avoid them. So this is the idea. Oh, anyways, I think that I wanted that question up again. But anyways, is that... Can we go back to that question? Yeah. No, we can't. All right. Do you have a plan in place to provide support to members struggling with PTSD instead of suspending their licenses, which led to lawsuits? Members need help. What is your plan to address this? Yeah, that was a real problem a few years ago, and I think it, should have been dealt with differently. But here we are. I think we're. I can't speak to exactly what it is that we're doing now. I know that it changed significantly because of what happened in 2015, 2016. We would never, and I would say that as president, we would never suspend somebody's license because of PTSD. I don't know if you want to try and add to that at all. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I don't know what else really to say to that. I agree that shouldn't have happened and that would never happen now.
I'll put on my comms hat here. PTSD is an issue, obviously, that is a lot greater than any one of us, any one of our organizations. It's something that takes a lot of collaboration. We know that AHS has programs for all sorts of mental wellness, and we also know that other associations in the province offer support. So when complaints come into us and when we're looking at situations for registration that clearly there are issues or concerns for us, we will reach out to other organizations and make sure that the members are aware of those additional supports too. So like I said, it's one of those pieces that requires just a lot of us working together to make sure that you get the right supports.
Yeah, and so as an AHS employee, again, it's easy for me to get the support, but if I don't work for AHS, where do I get my support? And I know that the APA is one organization that's trying to support people maybe who don't work for AHS and could provide some support, so that might be an option. Next question. Why are instructor hours no longer recognized for credit? I don't know how to answer that question. Anybody?
I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, we'll put that in the. We'll get a question. We'll get an answer for you, but I don't know how to answer that. Yeah. Would the college consider a lowered non-practicing license registration fee? Currently, there is no option for practitioners on any kind of leave. We did actually talk about this, and I'll be honest, I forget where it ended up. We did talk about this with people who are retiring, but who still want to be active members, or the idea that if somebody is on some sort of a leave, how can we support that person? It's definitely a good question, and I think it's something that college and administration should consider. So we'll definitely we'll park that. Oh, Matt.
Yeah, I'd also make a comment on that is when we've really worked hard to get down to kind of a balanced budget where it's kind of break even. So if you're lowering some fees in one places, then where's the money going to come from to sort of support that budget?
Fair enough.
It's something we'll consider, but we also need to make sure we can kind of pay all our bills.
Yep. Next. Those who are already EMRs, how will you be able to increase our skill level to the new standard? That's a good question, and I don't know how to answer that. I'm sorry. I would suggest that there has to be an opportunity to do that through some of the colleges. I should stop talking.
So as of right now, the answer is not clear-cut. But upon deciding that there was going to be a new standard, it was discussed at length and made sure clearly by everyone at the council table that there would be bridging options available, and that it was going to be something that was not going to cost you the whole cost of going back to the EMR program. This was not going to be something that was going to be a horribly onerous process, but the bridging is going to be there. It is going to be an option for people who want to bridge to the new standard.
Okay, next. Has the college met all the requirements of government under the HPA? I would say no, not yet. It's generally, we learned from Karna, from the nurses, that it's about a 5-year process before you finally can get yourself, kind of fully integrated. So no, not yet, but I don't know if Tim, if you have anything to add.
Well, in the continuing competence, we were granted by government a 5-year window to do that, and I think we'll meet it under that area of requirement.
No, and that's
we haven't yet, but we are dedicated to meeting the timelines that has been laid out for us. So
I think we still have 3 years, so we're well on our way. Next. In the previous years, the mandatory CC module has been released very late in the year. Is there a plan in place to have these modules released at a more appropriate time? Comms.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We're working, actually, from what I understood, from the continuing competence program side of things, on a module that would be developed through, I think it's MacEwan University, and it's a little bit more on helping you all understand the requirements under HPA, what the different nuances of it are, and just helping bring the awareness around what the Act requires.
But releasing it sooner, I think that's something that we definitely need to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question. Is there an updated list of approved continuing competence training put out by ACP? I don't know. Anybody?
So the program's pretty open right now, which is why so much of the review is happening on the program side of things. Continuing Competence has put forward some program planning to council. It's coming back in June for more discussion and consideration. That's part of what Tim talked about with the move to the 1-year cycle that aligns us with HBA. Part of Continuing Competence, to remember, is that it's continuing. So it's a requirement every year for a reason, because we want to make sure that every year you're doing something to make sure that your skills are sharp. So for the updated list of approved training, it's pretty much open right now because we do rely on you to self-identify areas where you need to support your training and further your experiences. Tim?
I don't know if I can add to that.
Okay, next. Given the ability of free and easy web-based streaming, is it possible to stream publicly available portions of council meetings to allow practitioners to see council in action? In action, let me tell you. It is thrilling. I got to say, if you want to watch governance in action, you'd have more fun watching Parliament or the legislature. Yeah, we actually talked about, I'm IT challenged. It's a Facebook, well, maybe Facebook Live, where you can you could watch council. Part of the problem that we run into, and I know with other regulators that they've run into it, is, because we talk about some confidential issues or topics, it would be turning it on and off, depending on what we were talking about. I don't have a problem with having a live stream of council. It just is difficult for us to understand, and I know we've been talking with the other regulators about that. Do you know anything about? No, Tanisha?
I don't.
Okay,
Brendan, but definitely find me later, and let's talk a little bit more about what kind of information you're looking for, because I think we've also talked about providing more information after council meetings about what was discussed in some of the decisions, so that you have a better understanding of the business that goes on at that table.
I think a part of it also goes to what's the best practice. So we looked at the other health regulators to see what it is that they do. Do they release minutes from meetings? Do they live web their meetings? So we talked to them a lot. So, but definitely this comes up. This is the second time this has come up, because it was up last year, and so it's definitely something that we just continue to need to put back on the table to talk about. Lance?
And if you want to come to a council meeting,
yes, absolutely.
Come to a council meeting.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's only so many chairs in the room, so at some point we can't have all of you come at the same time. But council meetings are open. You're welcome to come anytime.
It's a free lunch. In regards to the degree program, what consultation has been done with paramedics to determine if a degree program is desirable amongst practitioners? Huh. I see that you want to, yeah, and this goes back, I remember, the mid-90s, talking about the fact that we wanted a degree program. I think there's always going to be a need to have the diploma paramedic just working on an ambulance or working on a remote site doing the work that, a diploma paramedic can do. But I think if we want the profession to grow, if you want more opportunities to do more, then we are going to need to move into the idea of a degree and all the things that a degree can offer. Don't hold me to this stream, but the idea that I would envision, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but this is my thought, is that you would, potentially go to your college, take your 2-year paramedic program, and then you can go and work as a paramedic if that's what you want to do. Or then you can transition to university and do another 2 years, get yourself a degree, and then it opens it up to so many more different ideas like research, education, management. These are all, and then there's the various streams in there as well. So I think in order for this profession to grow, we're going to need to move to a degree. Anybody else want to add anything on that?
I can speak a little bit about that. The question was what has been done. I think that, I'll just be frank, I think that we need to work on program approvals, and there's quite a bit of work to be done in this area. If we're shooting for 2025, that's between all of us, I think that's a heady goal, but I think it's manageable. But there needs to be work done in this area, and I'm excited to see that kind of work being done.
Yeah. Next question. A few years ago, the college removed itself from PAC because they are not a regulatory body. What made the college decide to continue this relationship despite the non-regulatory? Oh, well, I'll answer it anyways. So PAC is coming this afternoon. Pierre Poirier is going to be here. I think I'll answer it briefly because I think when Pierre comes to speak about what PAC does, I think you'll have a very clear understanding about why it is that we reinserted ourselves into working with PAC. All the work that Pierre and the group PAC does with meeting with federal health minister. I know Pierre himself was invited to sit at a round table with the federal health minister. 12 people. Pierre was there representing paramedics. These are the kind of things that I think PAC does that we can't lose sight of. And that's why we need to maintain that relationship. The other part about PAC is because we pay as much as we do, we pay per member. And so because we pay all the 8,900 members, we carry the most weight with PAC. We could control the entire meeting if we wanted to because we carry the most votes. Think about the other way too with PAC. So Pierre is meeting with these federal ministers. Think of all these international trade and national trade agreements that we have. Although with Donald Trump, who knows how many we'll have. But think of all these international trade agreements we have. That's going to impact you when paramedics from Belgium or Australia or wherever it is are going to be coming in here and are going to be allowed to work because of an internal trade agreement or an international trade agreement. And so with PAC, we have the opportunity to sit at these tables and have this influence. And because we have the most votes at that table, we can control what gets decided there. Next. Is ACP in the process of nationalization, the certificate of EMR, EMT, and paramedic? Well, I think what I understand is there going to be a national standard. We're definitely working toward a national standard, the NOCPs and the PRP. A national standard, though, I mean, imagine. We have a hard enough time sending oil to BC. Imagine trying to get. That was pretty good, wasn't it? We have a hard enough time doing that. Imagine then trying to standardize, EMR, EMT, and paramedic across the country. So there's definitely the goal is with the national standard, but whether or not there'll be an actual certificate that will allow you. Now, the agreement on international trade, internal trade, the AIT, does allow you to transfer anywhere. You have to meet the requirements of that province, but it does allow you to move anywhere in the country. I hope that answers the question.
And so on that same world, the Alberta College of Paramedics is the Alberta College of Paramedics. And labor mobility from province to province is one thing, but when it comes to the national, looking across Canada, That's part of why we work with the Paramedic Association of Canada, because they are across Canada. They are national.
Next. On my practice permit, I don't know if it says this for everyone. On practice conditions, it says practice settings not permitted, non-emergent. Good Lord, I don't know how to answer that. Whoever this is, maybe just come and find like Tanisha or maybe Tim, one of the staff, and we'll try and figure that out for you. I have no idea why that would say that. Next. Oh,
Thank you.
that's nice. Oh, thanks, dude. I mean, really, wine? You're going to haul away? Okay, fine. Try driving it to the store. Is it possible? Is it possible to look into doing a lottery like STARS does? This could raise money to lower a limit, maybe 50. Okay, well, that's a good question. Maybe Matt could, or Tanisha could answer. I would say probably not, because we're not. I don't know. I don't want to answer that question. We might have to.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll probably table. It's something we can keep in mind, but I think there'd be a lot of work that would go into that. It would get us away from kind of our core business and what we're trying to accomplish, but it's something we can keep in the back of our minds.
Something new ED CEO can maybe look into. So, with a lot of increase to the EMR program, when are we going to look at increasing training for the PCP program? Yeah? Okay.
With the increase in training to the EMR program, like I said, there was quite a bit of work done. This is prior to me coming here, but going back to the reading through the documents and how this came about, there was a lot of work done to justify it, to create it, and to implement it. But we're still needing to finish the work on implementing that. Once we have what I'd like to see is a process in place for doing this, solid standards that we create, that we can use in collaboration with the educational institutions, and then move on to the PCP and ACP programs. And we also have to keep in mind that we'll be looking at eventually getting to a degree program, if that's, and so, we're going to leave the PCP program alone just for now till we develop the processes, finish off the standards, and really get the EMR program to the level we need it to be.
So we're going to take a bit of a break, just 15 minutes. I guess people are asking that on Pigeonhole if they can have a 15-minute break. I think we'll do that. I think we'll try and see if, quite honestly, I can't believe how far ahead we are. And if exams is able to move their thing ahead, then maybe we should do that. And then all we have to do is pack, I believe, in the afternoon. Anyways, we'll figure that out. Let's take a 15-minute break starting right now. The BC oil thing went over well. That was good. Well, that was good fun.
Is we can actually say no, I'm going to let him know that Pat's here, but we won't have everybody here.
everybody. If we can just get ourselves back to our tables, please, so we can start into this next session, please. Just get back to your tables, please. We'll start right away. Yeah. Whatever you guys want to sit up there. Yeah. No. Let's just head back to our tables, please. Thanks, everybody. I just want to, I appreciate PAC and Tim Ford for moving ahead. This is just moving a lot faster than we expected. We are going to leave, so we'll allow PAC to do their presentation. We'll have questions for them afterwards. Then we'll do the exams piece right after lunch, and we'll take questions for about an hour afterwards. So I'd just like to introduce Pierre Poirier and Chris Hood. Chris is president of the Paramedics Association of Canada. Pierre is the executive director, and some of you will remember Pierre because he was a former president of this college. Pierre.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. I think I have a presentation just to be pulled up here. I think it's coming up. Thanks you, and it's been a long time since I've been here in front of you, and it's strange that I'm actually nervous today for some reason, not sure why. I have a couple of presentations, and just based on a little bit of the conversation I heard this morning, I have a presentation on kind of this big ball of this mosaic of what PAC's involved in at the national level. And then I have a separate presentation that I've been working on for a number of years, I'll say, Vision 2025, because I saw a few questions that came up this morning. So I kind of made some quick adjustments, and I'll be able to present that to you as well. Just a quick overview of the college. About 20,000 members, somewhere just under 10,000 come from Alberta. We're an association of chapters. We have a board of directors and an executive. The president of the council is one of the board members. We have an annual plan that you can always find on our website. And we have one part-time employee, that's not me, basically to take care of the administrative functions of the organization. And our focus is truly national, but national also kind of, it doesn't extend, it extends positively to the provinces. And where I say that is particularly on the issue of self-regulation, that we promote self-regulation across the country. And we've seen in the last number of years, Saskatchewan, Manitoba is going through the Transition Council right now in Nova Scotia, are moving towards self-regulation and really kind of following in the footsteps of what Alberta first did in the late 80s. And when I see Peter Simons, I think of REPA and REMTA, if anyone, there you go. And probably no one else in the room knows those two acronyms. But that goes back a long ways to, and it really is an important piece that we do have a national focus in what we do. And as much as this piece that I always think about is that in 1981 or so, when the Canada Health Act was proclaimed, the federal government didn't include paramedics as part of healthcare. And that is really the number one struggle in terms of recognizing, A, that healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction, but B, that there's a thing called Health Canada that really should recognize what paramedics do and the fantastic work we do. And just to give you an example of how we're not recognized, and this goes back to SARS in 2003, H1N1 in 2009, and even the Syrian refugees in 2015, we phoned up Health Canada, or I'll say I did, and said paramedics would love to help out. And that could be with the assessment and acting on behalf of the federal government to, SARS, H1N1, Syrian refugees, and the federal government said, they didn't say, who are you, but essentially they said, do you have a degree? Are you self-regulating? And we really don't know who you are. And so that's been a journey for me in terms of getting to the point where I think the federal government does recognize us. And I can tell you that we've made leaps and bounds in the last number of years, and I'll just kind of piece some of this together. Every 2 years, we've been doing a national survey with Abacus, a company out of Ottawa. And I just left a couple of notes up there about how well respected paramedics are across the country. And there's a few items that we always kind of insert into these surveys. So we've been doing it 12, 14, and 16. We're going to do it again in September this year. And, we've inserted stuff like, what is the knowledge of community paramedicine? And I'll tell you, in 2012, it was less than, I think it was around 2% of the respondents knew. In 2016, it was 8% of the respondents. So this is a national poll of the public. But overall, the public really, truly does recognize paramedics as being incredibly valuable to healthcare. You have one of those wishes that in Australia, paramedics are ahead of firefighters, but we haven't reached that status yet here in Canada. We're kind of like a percentage point behind, but that's work for us to do. So with respect to the provincial chapters, I mentioned that we work on self-regulation. We provide kind of the backbone part for accreditation, and that's through national profile. And I'm going to talk separately about baccalaureate education in a separate presentation I have here, and in supporting education of paramedics. The federal government, I put in 3 circles, and they all kind of roll together. And these are the groups that I meet with regularly in terms of Health Canada, Public Health Agency of Canada, Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, which is Minister Goodale, who's been very much a fantastic advocate and supporter of the paramedic community. And then also D&D, and that may seem like it doesn't fit, but D&D has programs, and if you follow the bouncing ball through their defense research development, through their Center for Security Science, they have this thing called a Canadian Safety and Security Program, which really does include paramedics within the scope, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's kind of our federal government focus. We have spoken to them, and particularly lately, we could include Indigenous Affairs or Indigenous Services has been an important piece, and I'll speak a little bit about that. And also HR, I think it's HREDC Canada, Human Resources Employment Development Canada. I can't remember the actual acronym. But we've also been in discussion with them about recognizing the National Occupational Classification for paramedics. And we think what a tedious little piece, but that's really what helps define what Peter was talking about earlier, international recognition of professionals coming from other jurisdictions or around the world. And they compare it to what our national classification is, the essential skills that go with it. So it's kind of it really is, when I come down to it, it's an important piece for each of you to have a voice at the national level. It really is an important piece. Annually, we do advocacy, and last month, there were a few Alberta paramedics that came with us, and those were the 4 topic areas that we sat down with 85 members of Parliament. I can't remember if it was 17 ministers, I can't remember the number of ministers, and we talked about these 4 issues. And community paramedicine, and I'll speak more about that. Paramedic mental health, because that is such an important issue. And Minister Goodale has been a fantastic advocate for our community on this issue. Opioids, and it truly is a health emergency. And then a commemorative monument where the Paramedic Association of Canada, the Paramedic Chiefs of Canada, and I want to call it the Memorial Foundation, I'm not sure if that's the right acronym, we've all kind of come together in support of this initiative, that there be a national monument in the nation's capital to recognize the fallen paramedics. And I really think that's kind of a laudable and an important piece of work that we're all undertaking. And when you hear the paramedic rides across the country, that's an important component of that. Accreditation, once you've graduated and you're working, for many of you, the accreditation process or the rigor of your education is now secondary. But for anyone coming into the profession, I heard earlier talk about how important it is to ensure the rigor and the robustness of the education and the consistency across. And so the Canadian Medical Association got out of the business in February 2018 of this year. And for the last 2 years, we've been working on developing a new agreement. And there's probably, I think, 7 or 8 professions: medical laboratory science, radiation technology, ophthalmology, and I can't remember the rest of them. We all came together as a working group, and we pulled together an agreement with Accreditation Canada. And Accreditation Canada, to this point, has been a pretty good partner. I'm really optimistic that the accreditation process will improve. I'm not saying that it was bad previously. I just think it was, if I see anyone from NATE or SATE, it's a rather onerous process. And hopefully we're able to refine that process by not having 6 boxes of binders travel across the country to 6 different people. And maybe a lot more of this can be done electronically. So that's the accreditation piece. This is, for the last number of years, I've been working with the Canadian Standards Association, not because I was necessarily a standards advocate, because it was a fantastic group of people to work with in developing standards for the paramedic community. And back in, I think, 2005, I got a phone call, and all of a sudden we were working on the CBRN standard. And that standard was kind of came forward in 2010. It was the start of a relationship and a long-term relationship that we've had. And in 2014, this is one of those linkages that I find interesting. This thing, the Department of National Defense has a program. We asked for money, and they gave us some money to develop with the Canadian Standards Association a framework by which we would develop standards for the paramedic community. And in that document, it says we have a priority that we need standards for community paramedicine, also for vehicle equipment standards, and for mental health. So these things were written into this document. Now this document became one of those foundational pieces whenever we went to look for more money and more grants. So that document is 2014. It's up for renewal. I hope to be starting work on renewing that and soliciting the input from across the country. So that first document recognized we needed standards for community paramedicine. We went and got a grant, I think for about $200,000. I can't remember what it was. And we developed a framework by which community paramedicine programs can be developed. And this is recognizing that if you're in downtown Toronto, they have the CREMS program, which is a deferring of 911 calls. In other communities, they have slips, trips, and falls, public education and health education. Here in Alberta and in PEI, there's palliative care programs. And these are all partly part of that picture of extending the paramedic care beyond the emergent event. And so that framework is out. We also struck an agreement with the CSA to make that document free. It's traveled around the world. It's been basically referenced in the United States in several locations and throughout New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. Following on that, and these are all kind of the, I don't know, some days I say I love what I do, and I call it a vocation in terms of the work that I'm engaged in, because that document led us to talking with Indigenous Services and Minister Philpott specifically about paramedics assisting in remote and isolated communities across this country, where there's a lack of physicians, there's a lack of nurses, and why not have a paramedic in this community who probably brings a skill set that is over and above a nurse, that they can also go out into the community and provide service in the house, in the residence, and not only within the nursing station. So we've provided a number of documents to the minister. We provided the community paramedicine framework, and now we're working on community paramedicine in the north, which really is focusing in on what is the kind of care that paramedics can provide in Pangnirtung, Joahaven, or Piganjicum, and really to support in a broader sense the needs, the healthcare needs of those communities. So this has been a fantastic journey, and I think we're almost there. I have a meeting next week with the Deputy Minister, just working through the actual, well, I know it's kind of bizarre to work on it, but it's actually the pay rates to ensure that paramedics are paid at least a nurse in this scenario. The key element in this discussion piece is there's a Supreme Court ruling that says that the federal government is the one that's responsible for the health care of the Indigenous community. Therefore, it's kind of nice that you have a national group that's able to advocate on your behalf. There are fantastic stories across this country of paramedics working in Indigenous communities and providing great service, and I think we can extend that. Okay, another topic, psychological health and safety. There was a standard that was developed in, I think, 2012, 2013, called Psychological Health and Safety in the Workplace. Once again, we took the paramedic standards document, combined it with, I think we had 15 letters of support from different organizations, and we went to the Ontario Ministry of Labour under one of their programs, and we got $200,000 to develop a sector-specific standard for paramedics with respect to mental health. And this was just released, I think last month, was released, and the contributors to this were from across the country. It's a national standard, and I encourage anyone to take a look at it. It's kind of a neat piece of this world of figuring out how on a national basis to create standards that are to benefit across the country. Coming out of that, there's another program that's come out to look at what would be the assessment tool for the paramedic service organization. And so we got another grant with the Mental Health Commission of Canada to look at what could be an assessment tool, not for the individual, but for the place that you work. And this is an important piece. If anyone knows Guarding Minds at Work from Simon Fraser University and Great West Life and a few other of the large health insurance or insurance companies, this is an assessment tool to see what the status is of your employment environment, to understand better what you can do in terms of what could be done to improve the health care of paramedics. Excuse me. The next issue, and this is kind of an exciting one, I'm trying to think of how to put it all together, but when we met with Minister Philpott 2 years ago, she was the health minister at the time, she invited the paramedic community to apply to the substance use and addictions program. And we did, and we got $1.2 million. We're just in the final stages of working on the contract. And this is about looking at paramedic standard for the treatment of opioid patients and creating a cross-Canada group committee to work on developing the standards, developing the educational tools to support the appropriate treatment of patients who suffer from an opioid addiction. So kind of an exciting piece. Like all of this, you know, when I look at this, this is 2.5 years in the making, and we're just in the contract stage as I speak now and just kind of pulling that together. So, you know, when I look back at how all these things kind of pull together, I mentioned those organizations with respect to the Department of National Defense. The last line is that they put out a call for proposal on an annual basis, we'll say, sometimes more than that. And they have a pot of money around, like their whole budget is in the 40 million range, but they have about $20 million to give out for research. And what they do before that is they go to the communities, as in fire, police, paramedics, CBRN, forensics, and ask them, what are your priorities that we should include in a call for proposal? So this is one of those pieces where, you know, years from now, what we've done in 12, I think 13, 14, and each of the last number of years, and we're meeting again in a few weeks, is we got a paramedic community practice, representatives across the country. I think Ian Blanchard is one of the representatives from Alberta. And we create what are priorities for research. And those priorities end up in a call for proposal. And then people kind of have the opportunity to bid on that. And that's where we see good things happening in our community. Quickly, just I think it was a year and a half ago, Minister Goodale, as part of his mandate letter, said we're going to have a public safety occupation officer benefit. It didn't come to be in 2017 because it still has to go through Treasury Board and the machinations of the federal government. But in this last budget, there's $300K for a death benefit. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And I don't mean this in a macabre way, but it includes death in the line of duty, but it also includes death by suicide. So there's a $300,000 benefit for paramedics that's available. And this also applies to, if I trace this back to work that was done in the 90s, there were paramedics in BC who brought forward the idea that paramedics should be included in the Income Tax Act under this bizarre thing called public safety occupation, so that they could negotiate better retirement benefits. That's been a real struggle. But because of that event in 2001, 2003, the Minister Goodale chose to use public safety occupation or public safety officer as the criteria. So work that was done in the late 90s, early 2000s comes to fruition in 2018. So there's been a whirlwind. In September next year, we have a biannual conference every 2 years. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who's going to be there. Oh, Andre Picard, I think is a fantastic speaker. He's written a number of books on healthcare in Canada. He's one of the top speakers, and I think Dr. Goldman will be another speaker that we've already kind of lined up for that. So people that I think are fantastic. White coat, black art. There you go. So that's kind of where we're at today. I'm going to talk about Vision 2025 as a separate presentation, so I just leave that with you. And if we can flip on the next presentation. What am I doing? So this is an abbreviated version of I think a 1 hour presentation I'm giving on Friday. But hearing Pete talk about what is PAC doing and what are we doing with baccalaureate education, I think one of the comments, I think it was John Jackal mentioned, it's a little bit of a stretch. He didn't think it was insurmountable, and I'll say the same thing. I absolutely do believe it is a stretch. The philosophy here with respect to Vision 2025 is bottom up, not top down. And the reason I say that is back in the 90s, I remember Medicine Hat College wanted to offer a baccalaureate education program. Went to the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and it was, how would I say, an unequivocal no. And the philosophy at the top levels of government in many respects persists today. But that doesn't mean we should be undaunted that it can't be achieved. The governments came together at the ministerial level and agreed that they wouldn't support individually, in terms of one province, supporting the creation of degree education without consulting all the other provinces. So there's this health workforce group that came together whose basic job is they got a big no sticker anytime somebody says, I want to have a degree education. You know, I'll do the mea culpa. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I wasn't an advocate for paramedic baccalaureate because I didn't necessarily see the value proposition, because I thought that the training, be it at PMA or at NATE, was sufficient for the job we were doing, and there's a good alignment. But I'll tell you that in the last number of years, I've changed my view and my philosophy with respect to this issue, and a couple of reasons. And these are kind of like the global drivers behind what's changing things. One is the non-exclusive scopes of practice. Years ago, and once again I'll use Pete again, he probably remembers when CPR was only done by physicians. And that evolved into other health professionals and then the public. And we see that all through healthcare, is that it used to be a pie that was only a pie, and if you had a piece of it, no one else could be part of that piece of pie. So non-exclusive scopes of practice really did start to say that if you had the competency to do something, and there were the mechanisms in place, regulatory, education, competency assessment, that why shouldn't you do that, and why wouldn't you be able to provide that service to the public? So the paramedics have really been an important piece of that, is that, you know, matching the competency to the community needs, community paramedicine, interesting and novel idea. The second piece that I oftentimes talk about is the deinstitutionalized care. The worst place to go when you're sick is the hospital, yes. And healthcare really is starting to kind of catch up to this idea in a very positive way, that why not provide healthcare in the home? And who better to do that, to make house calls, than the people who are already making house calls? So let's have the paramedic to do that. The last piece is, you know, really kind of the evolution of paramedicine. You know, really, when I started, you know, I always, excuse me, I use Peter as a reference on these things, but, you know, it was adrenaline, it was the excitement of the call, it was, and, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it, but a call where you took, you know, my grandma to the hospital and held her hand was kind of like, I really didn't get into this for that. We've had a world change since then. And the world change really is that we provide care, and the emergent part is the emergent part. I love it. But all the chronic care and the other portions of care are really kind of an important piece, and they're integral. They're not separate and distinct. They're part of that whole of paramedic care. And that really did change that paramedics got into chronic care. And health promotion and public safety. And those are really two important pieces that all kind of come together to say, you know what, scope of practice, deinstitutionalized, paramedic is the best person to do all this stuff, so why not have a baccalaureate education? Why is that piece there? Because the education is not necessarily robust enough to fully integrate all of those pieces of chronic care, non-emergent care. And, you know, I'll be the one to admit from my education at NAIT, you know, I'm completely ignorant about gerontology, and I don't remember ever talking about social determinants of health. And we're starting to get into this, but we haven't really embraced it. And these are kind of the things that start to become a part of a philosophical foundation by which you should have a baccalaureate education, because we don't deal with gerontology, we deal with a patient who has the sum of a bunch of illnesses that may be chronic that lead to kind of this gerontology in terms of the assessment of that individual. And for the most part, emergent care, CNS, CVS, respiratory, is rather, we have a very good education in that, but we don't necessarily have the breadth of all the other disciplines within healthcare. And I think that's what baccalaureate education is going to offer us. Not sure why the flower got moved off the centerpiece, but the question was, or if I go back here, was so how do we get there? You know, how do we build the argument so that it's competent, coherent, valid, that it isn't just somebody woke up one day and said we should have baccalaureate education. So the first part is we looked at CanMeds, which I encourage everyone to take a look at. Dr. Jason Frank from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, he was really kind of a leader in this area to say, what are the roles that physicians undertake? And have we ensured that the education and those competencies align with that? So when they first looked at it, they said, if we go ask a bunch of physicians what they think they are in terms of their role, they'll say they're a clinician. If you go ask the public, guess what you get? You get this. Because the public expects the physician to be a scholar, a professional communicator, collaborator, all these other things. So that kind of was a world change for the physician group. And Dr. Jason Frank and CanMeds really is kind of it's been a significant change to professionalism. This model has been undertaken and viewed across the world. They are recognized all across Europe, and people are more and more moving to it because it's one of those things of being internally focused as opposed to externally providing the service. And the external part is, well, hold on a second, I thought of myself as a clinician, but really what should I be? I should be much more than that. So we engaged in this and said, well, how are we going to get there? Some smart people, Walter Tavares, Ron Bowles, and Becky Donnellan, engaged in a process of, actually the title there, Informing a Canadian Paramedic Profile, the concepts, roles, and cross-cutting themes. I'll leave the presentation because I think it's worthy of reading the paper. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. And that document was completed in 2016. They used key informants. They did a full literature search with respect to what we know about our profession. And they really came up and started to inform the work of baccalaureate. I didn't get into the themes and the concepts within this presentation, but then it kind of was, what came out of that was a discussion piece on roles. That came back to the executive and the board and a national committee, and we looked at it and said, okay, what do we do with it? So this became one of the foundational pieces for baccalaureate education and considered entry to practice 2025, bottom up, not top down. For those to choose to do it, it may be there. And this is the idea that right now I think there's 3 or 4 programs across the country that are offering baccalaureate education. It's fantastic. If 2 more or 10 more in the next couple of years come on board, wonderful. So what does it mean? If you were to take a look at the 2011 profile, it's probably 100% of the PCP, probably 99.9. I don't know if it's going to be 100% of the ACP and maybe a portion of the CCP. I think Peter mentioned earlier that there may be an off-ramp. And these are fantastic discussion pieces to have about how does this translate. So could you go 2 years, get an ACP, and then do off-ramp and go and work? And then come back and do another 2 years if you wanted to get a baccalaureate education. Those are the, I think those are fantastic questions that need to be addressed. And also to recognize that we aren't the first ones to go down this path. Nursing has been down this path going back to the 1980s, and I think we can learn from their experience and make sure we do it appropriately. What may not be included, which may become postgraduate, may be CBRN, tactical, and actually some CCP. And the idea is that the baccalaureate probably doesn't have to consume 100% of what paramedics may do. It probably consumes 90% of what they are doing. And I don't know what that number is, I'm making it up. But that's kind of the foundational concept that maybe CCP in terms of dealing with swan gans and art lines is not the bread and butter of what paramedics do. But there's a specialty there, and we should probably recognize it as part of postgraduate. So next steps. We did the roles. We did a national code of ethics, standards of practice, and now we've just completed an education guidance document. And so with respect to the roles, this, actually I do have the flowers, the next slide. These are what are considered to be roles paramedic undertakes. They're not far off the physician roles. They're not far off other professions' roles, but they are unique to the paramedic community. And I can tell you there were lots of fights about what was in, what is out, and how is it framed. So an example would be, at one point we had health advocate, another point we had health and social advocate, and we ended up with advocate. And that's one of the ideas. So when you look at these are also interesting facets that are really part of the broader concept of what is a professional and professionalism. And particularly the last one, when you look at a reflective practitioner, is very much a key component. So we ended up with our own version of a flower. And we say that the integrative role pulls all of these together. So it's I don't know if my parts of the flower is the stamen or is it the, I don't know. I'll leave that alone. But really, it's what pulls all of these pieces together and overlaps them in terms of an integrative role of pulling the professional as much as the team member, the collaborator, the communicator together. The education guidance is work. Ron Bowles has led a group with respect to developing education guidance. And really, once again, coming back to the concept of baccalaureate education, and that document is just complete. It's in its very final edits. I'm hoping that we can, we'll probably do something similar to that we did with the roles. We'll probably do across Canada workshops to go through this document and look at the different components of it. About what's considered within baccalaureate education and how you guide the education for paramedics going forward. And it really does come down that there is going to be a portion of it that's what is the philosophy. The next piece that is going to start working is an assessment guidance document, which would be about now linking back to accreditation processes to understand how we can ensure that not just that the education has all those components of quality education, but that the evaluation part, the assessment piece, is robust as well. So I just listed out those documents and where they can be found. And a last piece that came up today was with respect to the emergency medical responder. We still have a profile from 2001, 2011, and it was renewed again in 2017. So that's not lost within this. And really, Carl Damour really did lead this profile in terms of ensuring that, and I would say that the Alberta view of EMR was well captured within the document. So that is available as well. And that really is the sum of presentation for today. Thank you.
So if we can switch to Pigeonhole, and then you guys will kind of figure it out. It's a lot of fun. It helps if you can actually read the... So I think I read the question... Oh, God, I can't do that. You're going to have to bring the question up because I can't read it. Will we see the development of a critical care paramedic program and recognition of this skill level in Alberta for those interested in continuing further than ACP? I would hope so, I think is my answer. I'm going to be careful. I'm not going to answer this too much because I don't know, but I would hope that would be the case, that yes, the opportunity to move into a critical care paramedic program will exist. I think I'll just leave it at that, and I'll make sure that that question get answered in the pulse, so it's you definitely get the answer that you're looking for. I'm just going to have to wait until a question pops up because I just can't read them in. I had mentioned earlier that Alberta paramedics are able to control decisions being made with PAC because we have a higher amount of numbers in Alberta. What are the other advantages of Alberta being a part of PAC? Well, I'm actually going to switch this over to Pierre and maybe allow him to answer that question. But, while we do have the largest vote swing in that organization, it's not like we're going to go around there and start whipping our sword around. This is the part about federalism, right? And it's hard. So we've got, PEI and New Brunswick and BC and Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and we have to work with all those other organizations. So yes, we do carry the most votes, but we want to use that, I think, responsibly and maturely when we go to those meetings. Would you mind? Or Chris, sorry. Yeah. Just try. They'll turn it on in a second when they realize.
Hi. Excellent. Well, I think, Peter, you're absolutely right. It is part of being part of a federation. Interestingly enough, I've sat back this morning and listened to the majority of the questions, and I was commenting to one of the other staff members about how much the questions that get asked here in this environment are the same questions that get asked in every other meeting we go to. I work for the regulatory body in New Brunswick, so the same questions that you folks ask are the exact same questions that we get asked in New Brunswick. So I think that speaks to Pete's point about not having to wave the sword around. I think it's the fact that we're all talking and dealing and addressing the same types of concerns across the country. I think being together is better than being apart. That sounds like a bit of a political statement, but together is always better. Maybe it's a song, I'm not sure. But certainly working together on projects, working together on issues, and coming up with collaborative type approaches nationally certainly has assisted us in New Brunswick. And I would argue has assisted Alberta in moving forward with some of the initiatives and some of the issues that they've addressed over the course of the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I answered this question earlier, so I won't spend too much time, but I do think about, the agreement on internal trade, which allows paramedics and EMRs to move across Canada. I mean, us being at the table and trying to have those conversations with those ministers is one of the values of being in PAC. And it is just as, and I think about, when we go to meetings in Ottawa, sitting down with the guys from New Brunswick and hearing what it is that they're experiencing and sharing my experiences. It's pretty cool when we get to do that. With the degree program, would the PCP program still be in place? I feel it's important for members to get experience in the field before becoming ACPs. I think a lot of this is still up in the air. I'm going to leave that question and let it go to the pulse so that we can get the most appropriate answer. You might be able to, as a PCP, go straight into the degree program. Or maybe you'll have to go through ACP. I'm not sure. I think it's all still very much up in the air, and I don't know. Fantastic.
Just one comment on that. The idea of having baccalaureate education come from a national organization that's not regulatory, that really has no authority, is that every provincial jurisdiction will get to make their choices. And I think there will be a lot of different choices made across the country on how this is applied. In the 90s, there were 53 titles, or whatever the number was. Essentially, we're down to probably less than 8 across this country. But there is still the kind of the primacy or the first order of decision-making, which rests with the regulatory college in every province. So how this rolls out and how this comes to be really will be at the discretion of the Alberta College and its membership, and then each province individually.
When the degree comes out, would someone that is a PCP or EMR currently at that time have the option to take the degree, not have to spend 4 years doing it based on our prior experience certificate? I don't think I understand. When the degree comes out, would someone... Oh, good. Okay, go, because I don't understand.
If I'm reading the question right, I'm assuming somebody's talking about prior learning assessments and whether, in fact, they will get credit for their practice/education in their current work. So there's two pieces to the question. One is, how will the regulatory body deal with people who have the existing education when, for the lack of a better term, the switch gets switched? And that's, I think, lots of lessons out there from other health professions, particularly nursing, about how they address that situation. There are still nurses in the system with the diploma program, and there are people that have chosen to move forward. Again, that's really a question for the regulatory body in the particular jurisdiction. But I would suggest that there would not be an educational program in Canada that would not currently and is not required to have some sort of prior learning assessment process that they put people through before they give them any education in any degree or any diploma. So they do allow for prior recognition of existing practice, experience, and education.
Okay, You say paramedicine is a respected profession, yet the public still is uneducated on what our scope is and still referred to us as ambulance drivers. Is PAC working on changing that perception? I'll let you guys try and...
I absolutely agree with the statement that PAC is working on changing this perception. And you see that in terms of the national polls of how paramedics are viewed in this country. And another piece is, I think, that bit by bit how the federal government views paramedicine. And I remember about 4 years ago, Minister Philpott, in some of her commentary, when she started talking about community paramedicine, her vocabulary, her glossary no longer included the word ambulance driver, EMT, and such. So it really did change over to the word paramedic. And I've seen that across the country in various services, and particularly with the federal government in terms of how they view our profession. One of the pieces that's important in that work, and I mentioned it with the National Occupational Classification, is working with Employment Skills Development Canada. My apologies for the acronym of, I think it's Minister Haju, and getting them to change the classification of paramedic to under the professions bracket. So the EMT would still be within the health clinical grouping, and then to get the paramedic within the health professions grouping, and I can't remember what the number is, 314 or something. So that's kind of one of those long pieces of work. And we have had the ear of the minister to actually bring that issue through the bureaucracy on that issue.
So Roger says, to be clear, I believe that PAC is an important Canadian paramedic association. How do paramedic voices get represented in PAC? So that's through the college. So myself or somebody who is appointed goes to the regular board meetings or PAC events, and we are the ones who speak on behalf of Alberta paramedics. Yeah?
I think it's other ways are that, Pierre talked earlier about the Canadian Standards Association, the Canadian Paramedic Profile. All of those initiatives generally have people from across the country, which may include and does include practitioners from Alberta. Whether or not they're directly related to council or report to council may or may not be true. Sometimes we ask council to appoint people for us or appoint one of their members to a committee. But generally speaking, there's a myriad of ways for Alberta practitioners and Alberta governance leaders to be part of PAC committees and PAC work.
Okay. I didn't know so much. I didn't know PAC did so much. It's exciting. How does a practitioner get more directly involved with PAC if interested? And I think on a personal note, it is, I forget when it was that you came. Was it November of 2016? I forget what it was. Pierre came and basically gave that first talk to council. And I was really surprised at the work that PAC did. And especially the work that Pierre and Chris and Dwayne Forsman, he's works in Manitoba, the work that they're doing, it is really incredible, and there is an immense amount of value. How does somebody get more involved with PAC?
Part of it is that I would say first that your college knows that you're interested in working on PAC initiatives, because oftentimes I do send Pete an email saying that we'd like to have a representative from Alberta. And I'll tell you why is that on all of that Canadian Standards Association items that I spoke about, they have a rule that's called a balance matrix in terms of their committees. And their committees are structured so that you have people from all voices. So, I'll give you the example on the mental health issue. There were a number of unions that were involved, and Ray Geldrich from HSA was involved in that committee. When it comes down to other research pieces, we've had Ian Blanchard oftentimes involved in stuff. And more recently, and I'll put a plug in for our weekly e-news that comes out, we solicited for individuals who'd be interested in working on the paramedic assessment tool the psychological health and safety assessment tool. And we got people that I never knew, in terms of that reached out and said, I'd like to participate in this, and here's a little bit of what I know. So all of a sudden there were a couple of people from Saskatchewan that were engaged in this development of this assessment tool.
Next. Will an international paramedic exchange program be possible or considered? Actually, on a personal note, the very first paramedic who went to Australia was my roommate. That was a long time ago. So it is possible to do exchanges, but on to create a process to make it happen easier. I don't know. Sure.
I think there is some good work going on internationally, and PAC's involved in a number of initiatives. We present regularly at things like the Turkish Paramedic Association conference. The Turkish folk are really interested in some collaborative work. I know from New Brunswick's perspective, we're in discussions with them about an international examination process for their internationally trained people, so they're interested in that. I know that we have relationships with the Irish Paramedic Association, or Irish College, I guess it is, of paramedics, and Pierre's spoken frequently at a number of those different conferences. So while there is no direct exchange program, I think we're building that capacity and building those relationships so that that will potentially be available in the future.
If I could just put one more plug in for baccalaureate, was an interesting thing. I don't know if it was 10, 15 years ago that Australia committed to baccalaureate education for their paramedics. And then about 3-4 years ago, the City of London went to Australia and said, we're hiring 300 paramedics. And they hired 300 Aussies. And they moved to London. And that's the kind of international opportunity that starts to present itself when you're part of that baccalaureate family. Don't get me wrong, that's not the sole motivation, but that's one of those other pieces of the story that starts to line up in terms of labor mobility. It's not just labor mobility in terms of going from Calgary to Toronto or the other way around. It's about being able to go to London, England, or Sydney, Australia as well.
Why are we concerned about the pathway to a postgraduate future when we don't even have a defensible national exam to bring cohesiveness to a national paramedicine? Shouldn't that be the focus of PAC? And that is the difficulty. Again, being a federalist kind of nation, is that each province has their own kind of requirements for how things should operate. So it just makes it difficult in trying to come up with one exam. Chris.
Again, I would echo what Pete said. National examinations are a tool. They're not the only tool. Really, national examinations, the design and development of the 5 or 6 province exam in Canada, because there still are a few outliers, Alberta being one, New Brunswick being another, and Ontario being yet another, that don't use the exam that was developed by the organization. That's one tool for national interprovincial reciprocity. It's not the only tool, and that process is mandated federally through Chapter 7. So regardless of whether there's a national exam, interprovincial mobility and reciprocity exists. It's mandated. You have to do it. Alberta does it. They do what I think, from the experience that my members in my province have reported back to me, does a real good job about. We're a net exporter, I would say, of practitioners because, well, let's face it, who really wants to live in New Brunswick? It's not that.
But you guys are also friendly.
Economically, we're not that strong. So, but realistically, we accept people from across the country. We send people from across the country to other jurisdictions. So it works. That's only one tool.
How did PAC consult with Alberta Paramedics regarding Vision 2025 and the degree program? Well, I mean, that's a tough one. I know that this whole idea of a degree program, again, I heard about it back in the mid-90s. Again, it comes through, how colleges and different associations and different organizations work. There's a large body. That body votes for a group to lead that body, and that, the leading group ends up going to different meetings and having conversations with people across the country about how something will move forward. I don't know if you can answer that more gracefully, but...
Two items. One would be that when I talked about the decision to engage Walter Tavares, Becky Donnell, and Ron Bowles in the development of that informing a paramedic profile, that decision point was in 2015, I think the month of July, and it was, and I hope I'm putting you on the spot, it was then at the Alberta College Paramedics headquarters, or your headquarters in Sherwood Park. So the first piece is that I'd say the province of Alberta has been absolutely involved from the ground floor. And the second piece is that as we move forward on this journey, the reason 2025 is not 2020 is there's still lots of work to do. And in discussion with government, we've already been advised, and we fully accept it, is that we'll have to do a full consultation process with the profession. And that's another piece that's coming after the assessment guideline, will be that, at the same time, are employers truly, can we comment that employers are willing to hire these people, that the educational schools are willing to have these programs, and does the paramedic working in downtown Edmonton believe that that's a valid career aspiration or something that should be done? So all those pieces still have to come together.
So it's just a few minutes to noon, so I think we're going to stop any... we're going to have about an hour or so of questions after the exam folks give their topic and we go through their questions. Just because we've kind of ended a little bit quicker than we expected. So I'll stop the questions there. Any questions, again, like we've said, any questions that don't get answered here like we did last time will end up in the Pulse over the next few months. So I just want to thank Pierre and Chris. Pierre is coming from Ottawa, Chris is from New Brunswick. So we really appreciate the fact that they came all this way to speak to us. Lunch is available in the back, and we'll get back to this thing at 1 o'clock. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
No, it was.